Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to present to you the Happy Healthy Nonprofit, how you can thrive during year-end craziness. This is our terrific webinar for today. If you'd like to get a presentation of this webinar to your phone right now so you can follow along, you can text HAPPY, that's HAPPY, to 51555, and we'll send the presentation directly to your phone. We've got a lot of fantastic content today. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat on the left side of your screen. We'll endeavor to answer as many of them as we can. We'll pause a couple of times during the presentation to answer some questions, as well as we're going to share about 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. We've got a fantastic set of topics today. We're going to go through fundraising burnout, some self-care tips, the wellness triad, technology wellness, balancing work, play, and family, stress-reducing mobile cause solutions, and, of course, our Q&A. We're going to be going about 59 minutes more. We probably are going to go a couple of minutes after the top of the hour, so please do feel free to stick around to do so. Again, if you miss anything, we will be sending you a full link to the recorded version of this webinar, along with the slides, so you can review with a colleague, share with a friend, encourage them to learn with us. We've got great speakers today. Beth Kanter, who's the master trainer, blogger, and author, very well known. We're so pleased to have Beth with us, along with Aliza Sherman, web pioneer, author, and speaker, and our very own Jeremy Koenig. I do want to mention to all of you to buy this book and join the conversation. This is really what we're talking about today, the Happy Healthy Nonprofit. To purchase the book, you can go directly to Amazon using the link, it's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/happyhealthynpbook. Again, that's bit.ly, bit.ly/happyhealthynpbook. Again, you'll get this presentation along with the link. We'll mention it again at the end of the webinar, but encourage you all to, download, buy the book. It's fantastic. And so now I'd like to, welcome our speakers, Beth and Aliza. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you. So this is Aliza's voice, by the way, and
this is Beth. And certainly what you're seeing now, there's tons of ways to interact with us throughout the presentation. Please, type your questions in the chat if you're on the webinar interface. Of course, we're using the hashtag HappyHealthyNP. And of course, we also have a Facebook group. It's a book club for the Happy Healthy Nonprofit. So please do join us after the webinar. So this is Beth, and I've worked for 35 years in the nonprofit sector. And about 23 years ago, I had a front row seat at the creation of a field, and that's how nonprofits can use the internet for mission-driven work. And that was back around 1991 or so. And in fact, that's when I first met Aliza, who had been on there for a few years and had started an organization called Cyber Girls, where we could get professional development about websites. My day job, if you will, is as a trainer, instructional designer, facilitator, adjunct professor, and I work mostly with foundations, government, and nonprofits to design and deliver professional development programs in social media, networks, leadership development, and of course, self-care and well-being in the workplace. As a trainer over the last dozen or so years, I've literally traveled around the world, and I've taught thousands of nonprofits and social change activists, and which has been really rewarding. I spent 5 years as visiting scholar at the Packard Foundation, where I wrote the Network Nonprofit and Measuring the Network Nonprofit. The latter won the Terry McAdams Nonprofit Book Award in 2013. And one of the things that I do to practice self-care is I do a lot of giving, a micro-philanthropy, if you will. So I've donated all of the royalties from my books to different causes. In Cambodia, the last couple have sent some young women to college. This particular book through a fellowship with an organization called WAKE, is going to support the first communications staff for the Cambodian Women's Resource Center. And you'll see there on the right is Saray. She's the founder. I had a chance to meet her last May when we were there with a delegation of technology women volunteers to teach women's rights organization skills. And it's not like your royalties make a whole lot of money. It's actually a really small amount, but in Cambodia, it goes a long way. So I'm really happy to see that the work that Aliza and I are doing is really having a ripple effect of good.
So I'm Aliza Sherman, and I have been on the internet since 1987 and started consulting companies and organizations about internet marketing since 1992. Then the web was invented, and I started the first woman-owned internet company called Cybergirl Inc., and a global network for women to learn about technology, particularly the internet, called Web Girls International. So that is the organization that Beth joined back in the 90s, and that's how our paths initially crossed. So I was running an internet company, but before that I ran a nonprofit organization, and many of my clients are nonprofit organizations as well, which led us to working on this book, The Happy Healthy Nonprofit. But I also have authored 10 other books previous to this one, including Social Media Engagement for Dummies. So my background is pretty eclectic. My pet topic, which I'll be able to touch on a little bit today, is tech wellness and how technology is adding to the stress that we all feel in the nonprofit sector. So I'll turn it back over to Beth so we can get right into the nitty-gritty of our presentation.
Well, great. And before we do that, actually, we want to find out a little bit about the audience. So if we could cue up the user poll. And what we're interested in finding out is, what is your main challenge in terms of work-life balance? And when you see the poll come up, there's going to be 5 different options. So you have to choose one. I know some people say all of them are a problem, but just pick the one that is the biggest problem. So it's really interesting to see. We've been asking this question. We use it as part of our research just to see what's causing a lot of this stress.
The juggling. Yeah.
Juggling and demanding jobs.
And then self-care. There we go.
Finding time.
Yeah, that one's coming up higher than usual. Yep, finding me time. Mm-hmm. Always interesting to see what bubbles up to the surface for people and what they recognize in themselves as well, because we don't always have time to do any of this sort of assessment and self-analysis. So this is, and workaholic is at the bottom of the totem pole, but it's a reality. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right. So it looks like we've had our voting. Great. Juggling work, family, and me time. Great. And of course, we're going to talk about some tips around that as well. So I'm going to click the close polling. I got it right, and jump right into the content. So we're going to kick off with talking about the symptoms of fundraising burnout and how to recognize them. So fundraising burnout is right there. Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that occurs when we feel overwhelmed by too many demands, too few resources, and too little recovery time. And in a moment, Aliza is going to talk about the specific symptoms. But, why is this so common in the nonprofit field? As part of writing the book, we did a lot of research and interviews with people about this topic. And at a session we did at the Alliance of Nonprofit Management Conference back about a year ago, one of the nonprofit executives asked a really provocative question, and he said, why does something extreme have to happen before nonprofit leaders change and start to take self-care seriously? And he went on to share a story about a colleague who ignored the early warning signs of burnout, kept on going, and suffered an almost fatal heart attack. Now, that nonprofit leader was lucky. He left the hospital in a wheelchair, not a hearse. And he subsequently went back to his work with a different attitude and changed his behavior, prioritizing his well-being so he could continue to lead his organization's important work and get results. So there's many reasons why this happens. We have overworking due to a lack of resources. We have demanding workflows that exceed the collective capacity of staff, don't prioritize work. Maybe there's a little bit of mission creep due to funding and other reasons. There's this feeling of being indispensable, especially if you work with clients that are in extreme poverty or in extreme situations, like working with refugees. Or maybe overwork is really embedded in the culture of your organization. Maybe you have a workaholic boss, and that sort of trickles down into a sort of toxic culture. And then this kind of keeping on going and going, ignoring the signs of burnout, and not practicing self-care. So over to Aliza to tell us about the symptoms of burnout.
So we have in the book, we break it down, our 4 steps of nonprofit burnout, where we move from passion-driven to passion-depleted. And I'm sure some of these symptoms may sound familiar to you, but you may not be recognizing these as burnout symptoms. Fatigue and insomnia, forgetfulness, lack of concentration. You can see all of these things here on the screen. So what we talk about in terms of nonprofit burnout, some of the things that Beth has already mentioned, the different causes of it, but what we don't realize is how insidious it is and how slow, like a slow burn it is, that we are looking around our environment and everyone's experiencing it. So suddenly it becomes the norm. So when we see things like anxiety or people being depressed and everyone around you is in that same state, nobody's looking up and saying, wait a minute, this isn't the normal thing. So it's up to each of us to do a deeper self-assessment. In the book, we happen to have some actual checklists, so symptom checklists and other kinds of activities that can help counter these symptoms. But I think Beth has a pretty good index that she'll explain to you as well that can help you really quickly recognize, are you on the path to burnout?
Right, and this is called the Personal Craziness Index. And for me, it's like when the dishes are piling up in the sink, and when I'm misplacing my keys, or I'm making careless mistakes, forgetting your phone charger. Maybe it's a messy desk, unpacked suitcases from being on the road, or procrastination, or whatever. Everybody has their personal craziness index. It's an external sign that things are out of whack. So just take a moment and reflect, and maybe type into the chat if you're able to. What is your personal craziness index? Is it dishes in the sink? Is it procrastinating, working on tasks that aren't, mission critical, but, non-essential? Is it having a messy desk? What is it for you? Like forgetting to pay an important bill.
Forgetting to pay
oh my God, I'm switching. Okay.
Oh
my God,
I can
really
identify with almost all of these. And someone says crying, LOL.
Yeah. Right, and patience with my spouse. I know when I start screaming at my kids, I know that's one of those signs. Wow. It seems like it's really resonating.
Yeah.
Well,
I
okay,
agree.
Yep. And they're going, and they're going, and they're going. Wow. Yelling at other drivers.
I think this is really cathartic.
Great.
I think everyone should be doing this every day. It's like, type out the things that are driving you crazy.
Well, part of recognizing burnout is really about having really good self-awareness. And so if you can listen to your body, if you can start to notice those external signs when you feel it's crazy, then that's your cue to push the pause button and start to think about, do I have a practice of self-care? I tend to stop and I go for a walk. I actually might just tear up my to-do list and redo it and prioritize it. I might do some breathing, but it's a reminder, okay, to practice self-care. So let's get to some of those tips around self-care. First of all, self-care starts with you, and in the book, we looked at a lot of the self-care literature, and the most frequent metaphor that came up was when you get on the airplane, the flight attendant says, put your oxygen mask on first, then help others. So if you're not able to take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of your family, your friends, your community, your employer, the stakeholders, the people you serve. So if you're stressed out and burnout, depleted of energy, you're no good to anyone. And you don't want to get there. And the way that you prevent that is practicing self-care. And the goal of self-care is that it helps you replenish your energy and be more resilient. So you can actually tackle those difficult tasks and difficult situations at work. And when we think about self-care, in the book, we think about it as going beyond physical health, although that's important. So Aliza is going to explain that.
Yeah, so one of the definitions of self-care, by the way, the World Health Organization describes it as what people do for themselves to establish and maintain health, prevent and deal with illness. So in the book, for a framework, we began to divide the different areas of our lives where self-care can apply, but each one of these areas are very different from each other, but interrelated. So the 5 spheres of happy, healthy living are these areas of our life where we relate to others or something else or ourselves. So the first sphere is how we relate to ourselves. The second, how we relate to other people. The third, how we relate to the environment around us. Now, again, think of this framework in terms of how self-care can affect and improve these different relationships. An environment is a little bit harder to do. Like, you can't change the building your office is in, but you could change the ambiance of the office itself. Work and money is your 4th sphere, and you can't really separate those two. They are so interchangeable. And then the 5th sphere is a rather new sphere, if you think about it, maybe the last couple of decades at the most. Technology, how we relate to technology. 25, 30, 35 years ago, we did not have such intimate relationships with our technology. But now technology has invaded our every waking moment. And how do we deal with that? How do we control that, get a grip on that so it doesn't continue to add to our stress? So here are a couple of ideas, starting with a really great idea from a friend of ours, Aisha Moore.
Great. So there's Aisha Moore, and Aisha Moore is a colleague that I've known for a while, and she works on social justice issues and health equity for organizations, and that's her day job. And she had experienced a pretty bad burnout, and it came upon her sort of suddenly. She was at work. She fainted. She had to be wheeled to a waiting ambulance. She was whisked off to the ER, and the doctor told her diagnosis, work-related stress. And she said, what? I love my job. And so through this experience of a really bad burnout, she kind of put into place her own routine and process for self-care and getting back into getting her energy back and getting back into her very important work. And so she has sort of taken this on, and now what she does, in addition to her work on health equity, she's also coaching social change activists and organizations around taking care of themselves. So her biggest tip in getting started is to declare a self-care bill of rights. And that's basically, you deserve it. Self-care is not something to feel guilty about. It's something you do for yourself so you can give back to others in your organization, so your organization can effectively realize their mission. So she put a list of things that she wanted to do, and this is really important because self-care is very customized to you. It has to be something you want to do. And she actually wrote down this list, and she made a commitment to self-care. So now we're going to shift into some specific tips about practicing self-care, and we're going to start with the wellness triad, which Aliza is going to explain.
So the wellness triad, we don't see it here, but it's literally a triangle, and it has 3 circles inside of it. That's our visual for it. We're very visually oriented. In that triad, this is you're drilling down from those 5 spheres of happy, healthy living into 3 foundational needs that all of us as human beings must have to truly survive: sleep, nutrition, and fitness. So if you look at those 3 things together, they are so incredibly interconnected. And a lot of the tips that we give to you have to do with either sleep, nutrition, or fitness. If we were to narrow it down to one single thing, because also in the book we talk about habit change and how you can't change habits unless you start small, because habit change is a major thing. We all know this. Anyone who's tried to diet knows this. Anyone who's tried to get back into exercise knows this. But the one area that we feel is so important is sleep. If you start with one thing only, let's start with sleep. And Beth has some pretty interesting stories and tips on that one.
So protect your sleep, okay? So according to the CDC, insufficient sleep has become a public health problem for a variety of reasons. One being that when you deprive yourself from sleep, you're cognitively impaired, and that has an impact on your physical health. But also, if you happen to be driving, it's a leading cause of accidents. I think culture blogger Maria Popova of Brain Picking said it best. We tend to wear our ability to get by on little sleep as some sort of badge of honor that validates our work ethic. But what it really is a profound failure of self-respect and of our priorities, okay? So sleep deprivation, skipping on your needed sleep, thinking that you're going to squeeze in a few more emails before you go to bed, or, I only need a couple of hours of sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. If you cheat yourself of a good night's sleep, it doesn't let you perform at your best for your organization or your stakeholders. It's when you're operating on less than the required amount of sleep, it's like showing up at work being drunk or otherwise cognitively impaired. And is that in the best interest of serving your clients or serving your nonprofit stakeholders? So the question becomes, how much sleep do you need? Now, the amount of hours per sleep varies from individual, and it's different based on age, but the National Sleep Foundation recommends that adults need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night. So some of you may know me as a little bit of a data nerd, and I started using a Fitbit, which also tracks your sleep quantity and your sleep quality. So what I did is I started to track my sleep, the amount and the quality, and then I also tracked my moods and my productivity. And I found out that my sweet spot of sleep was 7 hours and 45 minutes. Now that I have that information, in order to commit to that, I had to really rethink my nighttime routine. Rather than like doing work at night and then turning off the lights and trying to get to sleep, which, by the way, if you're looking at a computer screen or your mobile phone, that disrupts your sleep. It disrupts your melatonin production, which disrupts your circadian rhythm, which doesn't get you a good night's sleep. So I had to make a commitment that I was going to stop this sort of midnight working, and I was going to shift to a more sort of calm routine before bed. And the other thing I had to do was to kick out my mobile phone from the bedroom. I kept my husband, but I replaced my mobile phone with an alarm clock. And the reason for that was I was using my mobile phone as an alarm clock, and I just didn't have the discipline when I set the alarm clock to not look at my email, not look at Facebook, not look at the news. And again, that would send me off to sleep with nightmares about work and not a high-quality sleep. So protect your sleep. The next thing is, is get more movement. Get a move on it. Many of you may have heard this or may not be aware of this, but sitting is the new smoking. And that phrase comes from Dr. James Levine, who is the director of the Mayo Clinic for obesity research. And he's the inventor of the treadmill desk and has 30 years of experience studying obesity. But being sedentary, just sitting at your chair for more than, 8 hours a day, leads to a variety of health problems, from heart disease, colon cancer, mushy abs, limp glutes, poor circulation, soft bones, brain fog, and so on. I mean, who wants that? Do you want to bring that to work? Yuck, is what I say. Now, some of you may be skeptical about incorporating more walking or movement into your workday, and maybe it might even be frowned upon. But the science, the research out there indicates that it brings us a lot of benefits to our work. First of all, a recent study from Stanford found that walking meetings actually boosted our creativity by 60%. So having a walking meeting with your team to brainstorm ideas, is a good thing. It's not goofing off. The other study that I really find compelling is from the University of Illinois, from a researcher named Chuck Hillman. And they actually studied brains. They did brain scans. And so the one that's on the left on your screen is all dark, okay? And that brain has been sitting quietly for 20 minutes. And then the other brain on the right is all lit up. And that brain has taken a 20-minute walk. And when I say the brain is lit up, the synapses are firing. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of great ideas. So what kind of brain do you want to bring to your nonprofit? So another tip to help you get moving at work is to get a standing desk. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You can hack one, as my colleague Beverly has, using a music stand and a carton. The most important thing about standing desks, here are a couple of pro tips. First of all, get a foot pad because your feet are going to get sore. Make sure you have the correct ergonomic posture. There's a diagram on the slides, and if you Google ergonomic posture standing desk, you'll come to a lot of resources that will show you how to do it. Because if you don't, you'll create more problems for yourself. And the other thing you're going to have to start to do is experiment with what tasks are best done standing. For me, I like to do email. I like to do calls. Sometimes I like to do presentations standing. I'm standing right now. But when I write, I'm sitting. So try to get a standing desk or hack one. It doesn't have to be expensive. Another tip is to walk more, okay? Don't use your computer keyboard as a lunch tray, okay? How many of us sit and eat meals at our desk? It's not a great thing to do. The CDC recommends that we get 2.5 hours per week of moderate exercise, and that could be a brisk 20 or 30-minute walk every day. And for those of you who are saying, I don't have the time to do this, why not just take a walk at lunchtime? It will not only help your health, but it'll also improve and boost your productivity. So the way to get started in walking more is to stop thinking about it, as walking as taking a break. I mean, I'm sorry, think of it. Don't just think of it as taking a break or goofing off or exercise. It's really a great time to think about challenging work tasks. I often go out for a walk when I'm thinking about writing something. It really helps creative juices to get flowing, and I come right back to my desk, and I'm able to, and it just flows. Another important thing is to recognize when you're at your desk and you've lost productivity, okay? And that's when you're checking your email or you're on Facebook or you're multitasking. You're just, you're not really accomplishing anything. That's because your energy's dropped, your concentration is peaked, and you need to just get up and walk around your desk. It's like rebooting your brain. Another tip is to try to think about doing walking meetings, okay? Now, when I say this, people go, oh my God, how can we take a walk with our full staff meeting? So the first step here is to think about the different types of meetings you do during the week. I'm sure all of you have lots of meetings that you have scheduled. And pick the best type of meetings for walking meetings. Sometimes getting started, it's good to do a one-on-one with your boss or maybe someone who reports to you. I think those are the best types of walking meetings to get started. Don't use the excuse that it's bad weather outside not to walk, because you can walk inside your office or walk up and down the stairs. If you do plan a walking meeting with a group, you want to make sure that you plan your route, that it's quiet along the way, and that maybe that there's a stopping point halfway through your meeting where you can sit down, take some notes. And that's another, which brings me to the next point about note-taking. A lot of people say to me, but how do I take notes? Well, I like to use a pen and a pad, a little moleskin. I take that along. I jot down notes. I walked recently with Janet Fouts, who is another social media marketing person, and she actually uses her mobile phone and takes voice notes. Sometimes what I do for note-taking might be to take the walk and to navigate back to our office for the last 10 or 15 minutes and then write down all the key takeaways. And I used to be worried that I would forget everything, but I found that walking really helps my absorption and my ability to remember. Oh, and the last tip, it's kind of common sense, but if you are doing a walking meeting, tell your walking partners to wear comfortable shoes. So now we're going to talk about technology wellness, and we're going to bring this over to Aliza.
Great. Like I said early on, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because none of us have truly been taught how to have better relationships with our technology, and we're being affected by that. But first I want to say, I don't know about you all, but I started standing up as soon as Beth started talking about standing up. So now I'm giving the rest of my presentation standing. And I was doing some deep knee bends as well in between, because sitting, you start to realize once you're aware of it, how much it's hurting your body. And those walking meetings, I knew nothing about that until I started writing this book with Beth, and the walking meetings are just absolutely brilliant. I love that idea. But let's move on to technology wellness. So in terms of the damage that technology is causing our body, and I hate to be all doom and gloom because, hey, I'm a cyber girl. I love technology so much, and it's really transformed our lives in some positive ways. But some negative ways, I'll let you in on something that's happening to me personally. After 25 plus years of computer use and maybe 5-7 years of smartphone and mobile device use, I am now being treated for neck injury, literally neck injury from computer use. It was slow building, but it has definitely affected me. And I think that each one of you can start thinking about physically what's been happening with you, and possibly recognize technology has hurt you in some way. So technology wellness is all about taking the steps that we need to take to create better habits so that technology is not impinging on our physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual health. So one of the things that I say right away, which sounds very simplistic, but boy, oh boy, is it really hard, is to unplug regularly and often. Unplugging now, literally unplugging your devices, turning them down and off, empowering your devices, is something that puts terror into the minds of many, many people I know. And it did for me at first until I started to do it. So how do you unplug? Given that most of our work now is so entwined with the technology, with the access to our email on our mobile phones, well, literally put a day in your schedule for the week or even time each day to completely power down or to completely walk away from all things digital, to go analog in some way. So there's a lot of different ideas that I have. One of them is at my home, I set up a charging station for all of the family members' electronics. And so we go to the charging station when we come home and we plug in our devices. And the rule is supposed to be that you keep your device there. And if you need it or you think you need it or you are tempted to reach for it, you literally have to walk through the house and think about, do I need it? It gives you that time to contemplate, to be mindful of what right now when it's within your reach is a mindless habit. I mean, how many of you just literally carry your phones with you in your hands nearly wherever you go? I mean, I start dropping things and realize the reason I can't grip anything is because my iPhone is still in my hand. So this mindlessness, it's become so pervasive. But if you put your devices somewhere else, it gives you a chance to think. Another technique is creative projects, but what we actually call it going analog. So one of the things that Beth does is called Zentangle and doodling or coloring books, these adult coloring books, which have just sort of taken everybody by storm now. The reason they're so popular is this need we inherently have to de-stress and the attraction of being totally analog. I mean, before coloring books, I was doing different kinds of art projects with my daughter, and that gave me an incredible feeling of joy, just using glue and paper and using my hands again for something other than texting. So I think that it's really important for us to look at alternative things we can do to light up other parts of our brain, and anything analog, tangible. Beth and I have an incredible love of magic markers. And so pen to paper can actually pull you out of that compulsive technology fog that we get into. And another thing that's really important are self.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I was going to reiterate your point about the going analog, that, and both Aliza and I, during the writing and researching the book and kind of practicing a lot of these techniques on ourselves, one thing we discovered is that when we've been too much with our hands on the keyboard and our eyes on the screen, that we get a sense of vertigo, and that's how this drawing thing started. And we would actually take drawing breaks while we were writing the book to help us refocus and relax.
So we don't want you to think, though, if we're sounding really gung-ho about these creative and analog and offline projects, that we don't love technology, because we absolutely do. In fact, Beth has this great saying that that apps can be agents of self-care. You could actually use apps on your smartphone to help you engage better in these self-care practices we're talking about. So, for example, I have one app that all it does, it has a beautiful chime that once a day reminds me to meditate. And I'm one of those people who I think, meditate? What? I can't do that. I have no time in the day. So there are actually apps for people like us who say, I can't meditate, such as Headspace or Calm. They give you 3-minute, 5-minute, 7-minute meditations, guided meditations that allow you to just put in your earbuds, turn them on, and take that moment to breathe. And Beth has this really simple thing to do when she was trying to break into meditating, because giving your brain that rest and that downtime is so important. One of the pieces of technology we have in our kitchen is our coffee machine, but literally just sitting quietly as the coffee is brewing, breathing, and taking that moment at the start of your day. But apps can help you track your sleep. They can help you track your steps. They can be great motivators. I use the Fitbit app, and Beth actually has the Fitbit wristband, but we can compete with one another on steps, be accountability buddies for each other. Well, she's at 20,000 steps. I'm at 1,200 on average, but I can aspire to be like her, and we're using technology to connect us to one another to help each other be more aware of our fitness levels. So we're not throwing technology out. We're saying be mindful about it. Take breaks from it and use it as agents of self-care. So I think Beth is going to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, and I was just looking
through. I think that might.
I was just taking a pause, looking to see if there were any questions, and there weren't. So now we're going to give some tips around balancing work, play, and family, and Aliza is going to kick off this section.
Okay, well, sounds good. So I have to say, I've been writing about and talking about the concept of balance in our life, work-life balance, which is a very, very common phrase, but a very misleading phrase. In terms of balance, it's really realistically more like a juggle. You can't have it all as balance, but you can take turns and take time for the things that are really important for you. And I think, I'm not sure if Beth mentioned at the beginning, we often talk about the fact that we both experienced tremendous stress when each of our fathers passed away within about a year or so of each other's. And dealing with that along with the demands of work and the demands of family was incredibly overwhelming, and we were suffering because of it. But I think a lesson I know that I've learned, and I think Beth agrees with this, is that when it comes to prioritizing what's important, we all tend to say, well, work is important because that supports our family. But ultimately, we need to flip it back, because at the end of the day, what's really important is our health and well-being, our family and our loved ones, our friends and our companions, and then work. And I think we've gotten so twisted up today in the way that we work that we put work first. And we give lip service to that, saying family first. But there are some organizations out there who have really taken the message that family is first. And unless we support ourselves and our family and loved ones around us, our support network, we will not have the wherewithal to do the good work that we need to do. Beth, you've got some other tips as well.
Right. So once you've done this sort of work-life juggle, work-life balance, let's look at, life at work. And one of the problems that many of us face is that we live in an age of collaborative overload at work, whether it's scheduling back-to-back meetings or that endless parade of emails or text, whatever it is, that we really haven't made time for ourselves to have this reflection time, quiet time. We've forgotten what solitude is, and that's something that's really important that we, have to do, and we have to do in the workplace, or else it starts to encroach on our, family time. So have any of you ever left empty spaces on your calendar, to do this kind of work, writing a grant proposal, thinking through a strategy, the kind of thing that takes, time more than just a few minutes? But then all of a sudden you find that time's gone because it's been grabbed up by meetings and other requests. So when you begin to intentionally block out that free space, like your thinking time, you actually put that in your calendar and you keep that time sacred, you'll be able to step back and think about the big picture, and you'll have that feeling of being less overwhelmed by collaborative overload, and you'll be more creative with your current work. I saw this photo being circulated on Facebook. It was kind of an interesting way to approach this. Somebody putting a sign on their back saying, do not disturb, I'm on a tight schedule today. Exceptions in case of an emergency are permitted. Like I'm on fire and don't know it. Are you on fire? Am I the only one who can put you out? Are you a pizza? Or the zombie apocalypse is here. So make some time in your schedule for that alone time, for that reflection time. I know Mike Brune from the Sierra Club, I was interviewing him recently. What he does is he goes out of the office for this. He will actually go out to a coffee shop with his moleskin and his pen to, for thinking time, and he schedules it in, and he protects that time like he would meeting time. So make sure that you schedule that solo time and take it. All right. So the other thing is to take a real vacation, okay? Aliza's talked about taking breaks from work, taking breaks from electronics. I've talked about, taking a walk around your desk just to reboot your brain. But it's really important that you take your vacation time because that can help you rejuvenate, replenish, and don't fall into that trap of working on vacation. So this is a photo of me here. I was lucky enough to go kayaking with my kids and my husband there on Monterey Bay. And it was over the summer, and it was a really hectic, busy summer for me. And I had blocked out the vacation, but I had all these deadlines popping up. And I was starting to think, no, I can't take my vacation. I have to work. Or I'll go on vacation, but I'm going to bring my laptop and all my work with me. And then I realized that, I needed that time off. And the thing that really stood up for me was, if I thought about it, if I don't take my vacation time, it's like working for free. And that's something that you probably don't want to do. Your employer doesn't want you to do. So take your vacation time and make sure you have that time to replenish and come back to work refreshed.
Great. So I'd like to invite you all to our online book club. It's actually just a Facebook group, an online forum that we sort of turned into a book club because of demand for it. But it's not just talking about the book, it's talking about a lot of these principles and these steps. It has a lot of links to different articles that we're coming across that are relevant and studies.
Now I'd like to introduce my colleague Jeremy Koenig, who's going to talk about 5 stress-reducing mobile cause solutions for your nonprofit.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Beth and Aliza. Now I'd like to talk about the top 5 stress-reducing mobile cause solutions specifically for year-end craziness. But before we jump into those, I'd love to take a moment and connect the dots between stressing less and fundraising success. For many of you, end-of-year fundraising is the most stressful part of working at a nonprofit, but it doesn't have to be. Mobile cause solutions are designed to automate the fundraising process and make collecting donations and communicating with donors easier than ever before, so that you'll have more time to take care of yourself so you can better do your mission. All right, let's jump into those 5 stress-relieving solutions. Number 1, collect more donations. Collect more donations with mobile-friendly donation pages and text-to-give keywords that can be set up in just minutes to easily hit your year-end goals. Donating to your cause should be as easy as clicking a button, clicking a link, or sending a text. And your donation form should be compelling with custom branding, videos, suggested donation amounts, recurring gift options, and people should be able to give from any device. Number 2, get volunteers to raise donations for you. This is an incredible way to have others share the load of raising donations, specifically individuals, teams, and corporate partners. Mobile cause crowdfunding campaigns can be set up in minutes, and all those people that I just listed can set up their own fundraising pages by simply filling out a form on your website. They get their own picture, their own goal, their own call to action, and they can be off and running raising donations for your cause today. Number 3, easily thank donors and send receipts. Make the job of thanking donors effortless with text message, gift communications, and automated tax receipts. What this does is this allows you to follow up in a compelling way with everybody who makes a donation to your cause, whether that donation be large or small. Sending automatic email tax receipts is a great seamless donor experience, because what it does is it puts in the inbox of the person who makes the donation your brand, and it gives them the tax receipt that they need, as well as you can customize that message to include whatever you like. Specifically, we recommend that you include your social follow links and encourage people to follow you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., so that they can see their donation in action in real time. Number 4, grow your database without asking for money. Mobile cause online forums allow you to grow your donor database by simply asking donors, simply asking people in your community, people in the networks of your supporters, to fill out online forms, to volunteer, to become a member, to take a survey, to sign a petition, to whatever you feel like would compel them to get connected with your cause. People that participate in your cause are much more likely to give and give again than those who are just solicited, that have no personal connection. Number 5, ensure that your messages are received. You can actually remove the doubt that your message is seen by donors, supporters, constituents in your community by sending text messages that have a 98% open rate. And remember, 90% are read within 3 minutes, making text message the absolute best channel to send reminders, alerts, and any type of communication that is time sensitive. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris for questions from our expert panel.
Thanks, Jeremy. And thanks again to everyone that's in attendance. And I know Beth and Aliza have been answering a couple of questions here. So I'd like to all encourage you in the last, we'll go over a couple more minutes. So if there are an additional questions, please do submit them into the chat now. As Jeremy mentioned, in the meantime, I would encourage all of you to reach out to a fundraising expert about any of the content that Jeremy just covered. You can reach us at 888-661-8804 or go to mobilecause.com/free-consultation. The team has helped hundreds of nonprofits with their very specific questions, so I'd encourage all of you to do so. We also have a ton of resources on the website at mobilecause.com/resources, so I'd encourage all of you to take a look at all of that. Again, another reminder to buy the book and join the conversation with Beth and Aliza. They've also been sharing a number of resources, both to their Facebook group, which I'd recommend all of you to join, as well as some resources, at Beth's website, bethkanter.org/wecare-step. But the book, again, go to Amazon. You can get the book at bit.ly/happyhealthynpbook. So if there are other questions, definitely we'd love to do so. We'll take, another 10 minutes or so to bring back Beth and Aliza. Are there any other questions, Beth and Aliza, that you've seen here that you'd like to kind of address verbally to everyone that's listening?
There is a really good question right now in the chat box, by the way, Beth. And I was trying to answer it really briefly in chat, but could we address this really quick? What does work-life balance look like in an industry that requires a lot of evening and weekend meetings and events? And I actually, just so you know, I put a quick response that the industry, the nonprofit industry, doesn't actually require a lot of evening and weekend meetings and events. It's the leaders of the industry, the people working within the industry, that has sort of twisted and morphed the expectations to demand those kinds of things. And so the second half of our book is about addressing organizations and how organizations can change the culture, shift the culture back to something healthier with more realistic expectations. How would you answer that,
Aliza? Well, I know you pointed to leadership, and that is one thing, but it's also learning how to up-manage, too. And I heard this recently from someone talking about this very thing, events and nights and weekends, and then not having the ability to take the comp time. And the person, and it was happening to a number of people, and it was a result of them sort of not up-managing with their boss and really pointing out and having that discussion around the potential dangers of overworking, and so having and the leading to burnout, et cetera. Taking a lot of some of the research that we've summarized in the book and kind of educating their boss and explaining to them what their schedule is already. And they actually had this conversation out in the open, and then they started a rotating schedule among staff of who was going to be at the event and tried to embellish that with more volunteer help and et cetera. So, and this is certainly something that it's hard to answer in just a moment because it's very specific to the personalities and the culture that's in the organization.
Yeah. What do you do when you have a boss and a leadership that's not very flexible? How do you handle that?
Well, I actually sent a really great link to an article that's on the Harvard Business Review site called How to Work with a Workaholic. And I think the tips there are really good. I think one of the first steps might be to educate the leadership about, the human costs of overwork and the organizational costs of overwork and what the return on investment is when you create a culture of well-being. And of course, a lot of that is in the book. And as we said before, after that, then there's having that conversation. Sometimes bosses may not be aware that they're overloading you. until until you've actually shown them your schedule or had that conversation. And sometimes it may mean if it's a really toxic, inflexible culture, maybe it's not the right fit for you. Maybe you need to start to look for another place to work. And of course, we heard lots of stories like that in the book, people realizing that, this is not the right fit for me, and sort of prioritizing their own health and well-being first by finding a good fit and a good culture in a nonprofit.
Do you think, Beth, if people were to share this type of information with their boss, how do you think that would go over, right? I mean, is there things that, if you forwarded those articles, or is there anything, how do you think that might go over if people might share? Leave a copy of your book accidentally on their desk?
That's kind of what I
doing that, right, Aliza?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I had suggested earlier is, Christmas gifts for the board. Oh, look at this book. Oh, how interesting, the topics. Maybe we could do an in-house session about these topics. And you introduce it almost in a sense, it's like a revolution. Like you have to do a few subversive things first to get a foothold.
Yeah, especially if they're not, if they're skeptical. I mean, there is a story in the book of a woman, I believe, from Ohio, a statewide organization, and they actually brought this up at their board retreat because it was part of the strategic plan. There was actually a goal around being an effective, high-performing nonprofit that, gets to their outcomes, gets really great results, and that would help them actually raise money, help them solve the problems that their organization's mission was founded for. And in the plan, it showed that, wellness and supporting staff, encouraging staff to take their vacation time, having good workplace relationships, understanding what the collective capacity of the organization is, having some prioritization, having that, be part of the organization's strategic plan to help them realize their mission. I'm curious about what the resistance to that would be if it was framed in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's really about you're going to be more effective. People are going to do a better job ultimately to, drive more support for your cause, which is ultimately going to achieve the mission and goal of the organization, right? I wonder, are there case studies, and I'm sure because I know there's obviously a lot of, corporate wellness talk and other things. There must be some, I wonder if that's another, opportunity for people to kind of encourage leadership to say, hey, look how successful this organization was in accomplishing their mission because, they took wellness seriously. Yeah,
we have a lot of examples in the book, and I know there's one that Aliza likes to talk about. An organization in Arizona that kind of shifted their culture from fear-based to, more caring. I don't know, Aliza, if you want to share that story.
The one about Justin Chase?
Yeah.
Arizona Crisis Network in Arizona. Well, yeah, he came in as a new executive director, or a fresh perspective, and saw and sensed a fear-based culture. And so he literally went from staff member to staff member one by one. That includes day shift and even night shift, which I think stunned a lot of the staff, that he took the time to sit down one-on-one with everybody and get a sense of what they were feeling and what they were needing. And the next thing he did was to fully engage employees in the process of shifting the culture. And a lot of the culture shift came from that listening and from forming an employee committee that could then, as employee to employee, go to other staff members and get additional feedback about things like how to improve the environment, give them more decompression time, and even one of the things that bubbled up to the surface for them was the need of a fitness room on site to de-stress after some intense sessions, because this is a suicide prevention line. So small things like walking into the room where they're supposed to relax, and there's pictures of cacti all over the walls, which is very typical for Arizona. But when you're going into a place to relax, the very imagery was prickly and sharp and pointed. So just changing the pictures on the wall to something more pleasing and relaxing, dimming the lights a little bit, more comfortable seating. And suddenly a space that was supposed to be relaxing and wasn't relaxing people became an oasis for people. And then the fitness center, they actually worked with their health insurance provider who literally paid for equipment for them to set up a fitness room, and all of the equipment was what the employees wanted. So empowering the employee and empowering the employee to get other employees on board, it turned out to be an incredibly successful transition.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic
I actually just wrote a blog this morning about a small organization, a small arts organization, I think with 6 staff members, doing a huge amount of work. They teach high school students in New York City theater skills, and the schools that are in low-income, disadvantaged areas. And they do an awful lot. And there's times when they're stretched really thin. And the operations director actually had read a copy of the book, and in the first part of the book, there's a burnout assessment, and then there's a self-care kind of checklist to help people create self-care plans. She went to her executive director and had a talk with her about how stressful things were. And even the executive director, in this case, they were open to it, recognizing that, people were stressed. And they talked about how, well, we do have some policies written, but we really need to kind of change behavior and culture. So let's make this part of our staff retreat. So they actually did the burnout assessment. They had people talk about, what were areas of stress. And then they had people create their self-care plans and started to identify kind of activities that they could do as a group. And they even set up a process where employees would have a check-in with their supervisors around their self-care plan. So they got started really super simply with, one of the things they thought might be a great thing is to do a walking meeting once a week, where the 6 of them would go out and just take a walk together, for 30 minutes. So that was one thing. They've talked about giving people the day off on their birthday. Little things like that seem to add up to create, a culture of caring and well-being that don't cost a lot of money.
These are fantastic insights, and we've reached the end of our time today, and so I'd really wanted to thank Beth and Aliza and, of course, Jeremy for the time and contributions to everyone. And just maybe wanted to give both of you, Beth and Aliza, sort of a final thought. Is there a final thought each of you would like to leave us with before we go back to our busy, potentially stressful lives?
Yes, this is Aliza. My biggest thing is respect yourself. Self-care is self-respect. We hadn't really used that language until very recently when someone said, oh, wow, when you said respect yourself, that really resonated with me. Self-care is not luxury. It is truly, truly valuing and respecting yourself. And without you being top-notch, you cannot change the world and do all the incredible work that you do in a sustainable way.
And I would add to that, it's not only self-respect, but it's a respect for your organization's mission, and it's respect for your organization's stakeholders and the people you're trying to serve, to bring your best self to your job so your organization can get the best results. And with that, I need a walk.
Me too. That
sounds
good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Aliza. And I would just encourage all of you to take at least one thing that you learned today and put it into action. So please do so. And if you'd like to put into action, fundraising efforts and talk to one of us at Mobile Cause, please do take that action as well by calling us at 888-661-8804 or going to mobilecause.com/free-consultation. You can also follow our speakers on Twitter at Beth Kanter and at Aliza Sherman. And, of course, follow us at Mobile Cause. Thanks to all of you again for joining us. And stay tuned. We'll be sending out a link to the recorded version of this webinar along with the slides. Have a great day and a stress-free year. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.